Where did the first Americans come from? For decades, the scientific community lacked a definitive answer. Now, DNA evidence and advanced chemical analysis of bone have settled this question. We no longer have to rely on speculation or incomplete theories. The hard data provided by genetic sequencing and isotope measurements has mapped the human journey into the Western Hemisphere with total precision. This evidence does more than provide a date. It proves that the people who first settled these continents possessed extraordinary intelligence and systematic knowledge of their world. They were not wandering by chance. They were executing a masterful expansion into a new world. The story begins approximately 25,000 years ago during the peak of the last ice age. At that time, sea levels were 400 feet lower than they are today. This is about the height of a 40-story building. Because so much water was locked in massive glaciers, a vast landmass emerged between Siberia and Alaska. This territory is known as Beringia. It was a massive, stable landscape twice the size of Texas. Genetic evidence now confirms that a group of people moved into this region and remained there for several thousand years. This period is known as the Beringian standstill. We know this happened because of a specific genetic signature. Scientists have identified a marker called D9S1120. This is a unique molecular signature passed from parent to child. It is found in nearly all indigenous populations in the Americas, but is absent in Asia. Its presence proves the original population lived in isolation long enough to develop a distinct identity. 3 independent labs have verified these results using Bayesian coalescent methods. This is a probability model that calculates when populations split based on mutation rates. The data confirms the population remained stable at 200 to 300 individuals during this time. This is about the size of a small high school. Yet, these people possessed the collective intelligence to thrive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Their survival was the result of deliberate planning and masterful environmental knowledge. They understood the migration patterns of megafauna. They knew exactly which plants provided medicine. They mastered the engineering required to live in sub-zero temperatures. They created tailored, multi-layered clothing using bone needles. These needles could sew stitches as fine as modern machines. This was not a struggle for existence. It was a demonstration of expert survival strategies. As the ice sheets began to retreat around 18,000 years ago, these skilled navigators began to move south. For a long time, the dominant theory was that they waited for an inland corridor to open through the ice. We now know this is incorrect. The evidence proves they moved along the Pacific coast. They were expert mariners who understood the kelp highway. This was a continuous strip of productive marine ecosystems stretching from Japan to South America. They used sophisticated watercraft to navigate these cold, nutrient-rich waters. They traveled quickly. Evidence from the Monteverde site in Chile proves humans reached the southern tip of South America by 14,800 years ago. To move from Alaska to Chile in that time frame requires expert navigation and planning. Definitive proof of this coastal lifestyle comes from the remains of Kennewick Man. He lived approximately 9,000 years ago in what is now Washington State. His skeletal remains preserved collagen. This is the main structural protein in our bones. It records a permanent record of everything a person ate over their lifetime. Scientists measured the ratio of nitrogen isotopes in his remains using mass spectrometry. This technique weighs atoms to identify their chemical signatures. They specifically looked at the nitrogen-15 levels. His nitrogen value was plus 121 per mil. To put that in context, this is a signature typical of an apex marine predator. It is higher than the values found in polar bears. This number was not ambiguous. It proved that Kennewick Man did not rely on land animals. He lived almost exclusively on a diet of marine mammals and deep-sea fish. This diet requires advanced technology. You cannot catch deep-sea fish from the shore. You need stable boats and specialized fishing lines. You need a deep understanding of ocean currents and fish behavior. This evidence proves these people were master mariners. They had conquered the sea thousands of years before the first pyramids were built. Their success was based on a systematic approach to resource management. They didn't just find food, they engineered ways to harvest it efficiently. This required coordinated group efforts and the transmission of complex technical knowledge across generations. The engineering of their tools provides further evidence of their sophistication. In 2011, a team from the University of Oregon began excavating a site called Rimrock Draw. They used careful stratigraphic excavation. This involves removing soil layer by layer to preserve the context of every find. They found tools made of orange agate. These were located beneath a layer of volcanic ash from an eruption 15,400 years ago. This dating was confirmed by radiocarbon analysis. Radiocarbon dating measures the decay of carbon-14 atoms. It is a precise clock that stops the moment an organism dies. The tools were found in direct association with butchered animal remains. The tools themselves reveal a deliberate design process. They were worked on both sides to create perfectly symmetrical edges. The stone was not local. These people traveled over 100 miles to specific quarries to find this exact agate. They knew this material was more durable than local stone. They knew it could hold a sharper edge. This was strategic resource procurement. They didn't just use what they found. They planned long-distance trips to get the best materials. This demonstrates extensive geological knowledge and long-term planning. They understood the properties of different minerals. They knew how to heat-treat stone to make it easier to flake. This was early materials science. The precision of their work is remarkable. They could strike stone at specific angles to create edges for different tasks. They made tools with edge angles precise to 5 degrees. One strike had to land exactly right. One mistake ruined hours of meticulous work. Archaeological sites show almost no mistakes. They mastered the physics of stone fracture. They knew exactly where the stone would break before they struck it. This reveals a level of focus and manual skill that modern experts struggle to match. Each tool was an engineered solution to a specific problem. They had different blades for processing hides, carving wood, and butchering meat. We see this same intelligence in their hunting strategies. They hunted mammoths. These animals weighed 10 tons. Their tusks could kill a human instantly. Multiple hunters had to coordinate perfectly. Success meant meat for a month. Failure meant death for the group. The kill sites proved they succeeded over and over. They didn't just attack. They positioned themselves ahead of time. They used the landscape to trap the animals. They used specialized spears designed to penetrate thick hide. This precision meant survival. It was the result of thousands of years of accumulated knowledge about animal anatomy and behavior. The most extraordinary evidence of their success comes from the teeth of their children. Scientists use a technique called serial enamel isotopes. As teeth grow, they form layers like the rings of a tree. Each layer captures a chemical snapshot of the individual's health. Researchers examined the teeth of Ice Age children to look for signs of nutritional stress. In periods of famine, the enamel forms distinctive lines called hypoplasias. These are permanent scars of hunger. The analysis of these ancient teeth showed something remarkable. There were no signs of famine. Across multiple sites, these children grew up with consistent, high-quality nutrition. Even during the peak of the Ice Age, these groups were not starving. They were not at the mercy of the winter. They had mastered the art of food preservation. They knew how to dry meat and fish to last through the lean months. They understood the nutritional requirements of their families. They met these needs systematically. This was not a story of marginal survival. It was a story of competence and foresight. They were experts at managing their environment to ensure the health of the next generation. The knowledge that sustained them was passed down through a disciplined educational system. We now have a complete evidence-based timeline of this journey. It began 25,000 years ago in Beringia. It continued 18,000 years ago along the Pacific coast. By 15,000 years ago, they were established throughout the Americas. This timeline is not a guess. It is a fact established by genetic markers and volcanic ash. 3 different methods, genetics, archaeology, and chemistry, all converge on the same answer. The pieces of the puzzle now fit together perfectly. The timeline is fully mapped. The mystery of the first Americans is now established fact. This journey required more than just physical strength. It required a collective intelligence that we are only now beginning to fully measure. They solved the problem of survival in a world of ice. They navigated by the stars across thousands of miles of unknown territory. They walked into forests they had never seen. They ate plants they did not recognize. Within 20 years of arriving in a new area, they thrived. That is not luck. That is intelligence adapting in real time. They were master architects of their own destiny. They possessed a deep understanding of the natural world and applied it with precision. They knew exactly when caribou would cross mountain passes. They didn't just know the month, they knew the week. They positioned themselves 3 days ahead of the herd. When the animals arrived, the hunters were waiting. This timing meant survival. They also knew the properties of hundreds of different plants. They knew which ones could stop an infection and which ones could reduce a fever. This was a sophisticated medical and biological knowledge base. It was developed through systematic observation and testing over thousands of years. The evidence is now complete. We have moved from uncertainty to definitive answers. The people who first settled the Americas were sophisticated and highly skilled. They were expert problem solvers who mastered every environment they encountered. They possessed a level of manual skill and intellectual foresight that is truly impressive. This journey is part of your history. If you carry the genetic markers of these people, their mastery is recorded in your own DNA. The intelligence that allowed them to survive the Ice Age lives on in you. This is where you came from. Your ancestors were among the most successful explorers in human history. They achieved these feats without modern tools. They used their minds to turn stone and bone into a global expansion. They managed populations across 2 continents for millennia without depleting their resources. They maintained genetic diversity in small groups through complex social rules. This required a high level of social intelligence and cooperation. They were not just surviving, they were building a legacy of knowledge that lasted for thousands of years. We see this in the consistency of their tool designs across vast distances. They had a shared culture of excellence. The satisfaction of these findings lies in their definitiveness. We no longer have to wonder when the journey began. We know. We no longer have to guess how they survived. The isotopes tell the story. The evidence provides a complete answer. 3 labs have confirmed identical results. The timeline is fully mapped. The question of human origins in the Americas has been answered definitively. This is a moment of closure for one of the greatest mysteries in archaeology. The data is airtight. The case is closed. Every claim we make is backed by a chain of evidence. The orange agate tools prove long-distance planning. The nitrogen isotopes prove marine engineering. The dental enamel proves nutritional mastery. The D9S1120 marker proves a specific ancestral timeline. These are not separate facts. They are parts of a single coherent story of human achievement. When we look at this evidence, we don't see a struggle. We see a triumph. We see a group of people who were master architects of their world. They understood their environment more deeply than we often understand our own. Consider the precision of their stone points. They are symmetrical to within a millimeter. This symmetry is not just for appearance. It makes the weapon fly straight and penetrate deeper. This is ballistic engineering. They understood the relationship between weight, balance, and force. They tested different designs until they found the most effective one. Then, they taught that design to their children. This is the scientific method in action long before it had a name. They were systematic in their pursuit of better technology. Their success is also visible in their population genetics. They avoided the bottleneck effect that kills many small groups. A bottleneck happens when a population becomes so small that harmful mutations accumulate. These ancients prevented this through strategic social networks. They maintained connections with other groups across hundreds of miles. They exchanged information and individuals to keep their gene pool healthy. This required a sophisticated understanding of kinship and social organization. It proves they were thinking about the long-term health of their people. They were planners. The scale of their achievement is hard to grasp. They settled 2 continents in less than 3,000 years. This is a distance of 10,000 miles. They did this while encountering completely new species and climates. They went from the subarctic of Alaska to the tropical rainforests of the Amazon. In every place, they developed specialized toolkits and survival strategies. They adapted their clothing, their housing, and their hunting methods. They did this while maintaining a high standard of living for their families. This is a record of intellectual flexibility that has no parallel. We can now look back at these ancestors with genuine admiration. They were not just getting by, they were mastering the planet. They were the elite explorers of their age. They possessed a sophisticated understanding of geography and climate. They knew how to read the clouds to predict the weather. They knew how to use the stars to find their way home. This was a world of high stakes. Every decision mattered. Their intelligence was the difference between life and death. The fact that you are here today is proof of their success. The scientific methods we use today finally match the sophistication of the people we are studying. Using mass spectrometry and DNA sequencing, we can finally see the true scale of their intelligence. We can measure the precision of their tools. We can confirm the stability of their diet. We can map the exact route of their journey. This is a validation of ancient intelligence. It is a recognition that our ancestors were as smart and capable as we are. They simply applied their intelligence to different challenges. They solved the problem of the Ice Age. The evidence has converged. The gaps have been filled. What was once a mystery is now established fact. We know when they arrived. We know how they traveled. We know how they thrived. This is the definitive story of the first Americans. It is a story of expertise, coordination, and masterful engineering. It is a story of a journey that spans 25,000 years and 2 continents. It is a journey that is written in the earth and in your cells. The evidence is complete. The timeline is certain. We have the answers we sought. This is the power of STEM collaboration. Geneticists, archaeologists, and chemists work together to provide this closure. They used the most advanced tools of the 21st century to understand the most advanced people of the Ice Age. The result is a complete and verified history. This history belongs to all of us. It is a reminder of what humans are capable of achieving when we use our intelligence to solve the problems of our world. Your ancestors did it 20,000 years ago. Their legacy of intelligence and resilience is your inheritance. The final proof lies in the sites themselves. From the agate scrapers of Oregon to the sea lion bones of the coast, the record is consistent. There are no mistakes in the timeline. There are no contradictions in the data. The evidence provides a complete and satisfying answer. We have moved from a fragmented past to a fully mapped history. You now know the truth about our origins. You know that our ancestors were masterful, skilled, and brilliant. The case of the first Americans is now closed. The evidence has spoken. We now know exactly who they were and how they achieved the impossible. They were the masters of the Ice Age. They were the first to call this hemisphere home, and they did it with a level of intelligence that still inspires awe today. The mystery is solved. The answer is here.